Today, we're talking about a guy who was basically the American West rolled into one person, Daniel Murphy. I mean, trailblazer, soldier, gold rush tycoon, visionary. His life story is the story of California. But, and this is the best part, it's got a twist at the end that you are just not going to see coming.
So here's the big question, right? This guy was one of California's founding fathers, a total powerhouse. So why on earth is a city built on his land named after the one man he absolutely forbade his daughter from marrying? It's a fantastic story, so let's get into it and figure out what happened.
Okay, so to understand this pioneer, we've got to go back. And not to the Dusty West, not yet. Our story actually starts way up in Quebec, Canada, with a family of Irish immigrants who just couldn't sit still. So Daniel Murphy was born back in 1826, and by the time he was a teenager, his family had already packed up and moved to Missouri, always chasing that dream of better farmland. But you know, life was tough back then. Tragedy struck, disease was everywhere, and it took Daniel's mother. I mean, can you imagine? That kind of loss forges a person, gives them this iron will, and it became pretty clear that Missouri wasn't the promised land either. The Murphys knew their real journey was just beginning. So what was the big pull? Why California? Well, for the Murphys, who were devoutly Catholic, it was basically everything they were looking for. They heard these stories from a priest who'd been there, tales of a true paradise, fertile land, an amazing climate, and, this was huge for them, the freedom to practice their faith. Remember, California was still under Mexican rule then. That promise? Yeah, that was worth risking it all for.
And so they did. In 1844, the Murphys pointed their wagons west and joined up with an expedition that was about to make some serious history. The Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party.
Picture this. It's May 1844. You've got 50 people setting out from Iowa. And get this, more than half of them were from the Murphy family alone. And ahead of them? Just 2,000 miles of some of the most unforgiving wilderness you can imagine.
But here's what's so incredible. They didn't show up with 50 people. Nope. When they finally reached Sutter's Fort, there were 52 of them. 2 babies were born on the trail, and not a single soul was lost. Now think about that. This was just 2 years before the infamous Donner Party tragedy. This trek was, without a doubt, one of the most successful in American history.
And a huge reason for that success? An 18-year-old Daniel Murphy. There's this one story where his scouting party runs smack into 200 snake warriors, and Dan later admitted he was shaking on the inside. But on the outside, he put on this bold front, signaled for peace, and it turned out they were friendly. That kind of cool head under pressure, well, that probably saved everyone right there.
Yeah, that kind of bravery and skill, it gets you noticed. Fast forward a bit, winter's closing in, snow's starting to fall in the Sierra Nevada, and they're facing the real possibility of getting trapped. So the leaders make this gutsy call. They decide to handpick a small, elite group of 6 to push ahead and get help. And who do you think was on that list? Of course, Daniel Murphy. And this next moment, man, it just perfectly captures who he was. On that desperate ride, he's scouting ahead of the others. He comes over a ridge and bam, he becomes the very first European American to lay eyes on the stunning blue waters of Lake Tahoe. Just incredible. Their success on that trip proved the Truckee route could be done, and it basically opened the door for thousands and thousands of people to follow. So he didn't just blaze a trail to California, he was about to fight to make it his home. When things started getting tense with Mexico, Daniel Murphy didn't hesitate for a second. He jumped right in. During the Bear Flag Rebellion, he was leading these daring raids to get horses. Then he enlists as a private under John C. Fremont, sees action in the really bloody Battle of Natividad, and his leadership just shines through. It wasn't long before he was promoted to sergeant. I mean, he was all in. This was his home now. Okay, so the war is over. And then a whole new kind of fever hits California. Gold. It's 1848, and Daniel and his brother John see a massive opportunity, but it's probably not the one you're thinking of.
This is where you see how smart these guys were. While pretty much everyone else was out there breaking their backs in a river trying to pan for a few flecks of gold, the Murphy brothers got it. They understood the real money wasn't in finding gold. It was in selling stuff to the people who were. You know the old saying, right? During a gold rush, sell shovels? That's exactly what they did.
So they set up this trading post up in the Sierra foothills. Pretty soon, everyone was calling it Murphy's Camp. And their business sense was so good, they ended up becoming 2 of the wealthiest men on the entire Pacific coast. It's wild. And yep, the town of Murphy's, California, it's still there, still bearing their name. But all that gold rush money, that was just the start.
Daniel's real dream, his true ambition, that was all about land and cattle. And he was about to build an empire on a scale that is just hard to even wrap your head around.
It all started in California's Santa Clara Valley. He marries a woman named Mary Fisher, and together they expand her family's ranch into a massive 70,000 acres of prime California real estate. But Daniel wasn't thinking just about California, not even close. He used that as his home base to build a huge ranch out in Nevada, running something like 20,000 cattle, all of them wearing his famous Diamond A brand.
And then comes the real showstopper, a 4 million acre cattle ranch down in Mexico. To put that in perspective, that is bigger than the entire state of Connecticut. This is how he earned the nickname the Cattle King. There was even a saying that you could ride all the way from Sunnyvale to San Luis Obispo and never once set foot off of Murphy's land. Just wow.
And he wasn't just a land baron hoarding acres. He was actively building the future. He poured money into railroads. He built sawmills and flour mills. And, with this incredible foresight, he actually provided the startup cash for an electric company, a little company that would eventually grow up to become PG&E. The guy was literally powering the future of California.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to that question from the beginning. How did the land of this absolute giant, this founding father, get named after the one guy he couldn't stand? Well, the answer is all wrapped up in his final days. So, it's the winter of 1882. Daniel Murphy is only 56, and he's dying of pneumonia. He calls his favorite daughter, Diana, to his bedside, and he makes her promise him one thing, that she will never marry this young fella he really distrusted, a guy named Hiram Morgan Hill. And she promises. Daniel dies believing his daughter would honor his final wish. But here's the thing, he had no idea. They were already married, in secret.
And that is the great historical irony of his entire life. The city that eventually grew up right in the heart of his giant California ranch, it's not called Murphyville or Murphytown, it's called Morgan Hill, named after the man his daughter married behind his back, the one person he tried so hard to keep out of his family's story.
I mean, from blazing a trail over the Sierra to building a cattle empire that crossed international borders, Daniel Murphy's life really was the story of the American West. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other incredible stories of ambition, family drama, and wild twists of fate are hidden just like that, in plain sight, in the names on the maps we look at every single day.
This biographical sketch is brought to you by the Sunnyvale Historical Society and Museum Association. For over 70 years, bringing history to life through the stories of westward-bound pioneers. And History Expeditions, faithfully retracing the steps of America's most notable trailblazers over the Sierra Nevada.